Why did Trump walk out of that meeting? The truth will astound you. It might sound like just another dramatic headline, but behind those words lies a chain of events so intricate, so quietly game-changing, that even the most jaded political insiders and global moguls were left reeling. Tonight, I'm pulling back the curtain on a gathering that nearly went unnoticed, until Trump decided to break every expectation and literally walk away from the negotiation table. People who witnessed it claim the move was so swift, so unexpected, that the entire room froze in shock. By the time you reach the final lines of this deeply woven story, you'll discover precisely why he left, and how it flipped alliances in ways that may shape the world's power structures for years. You may think you know the man behind the headlines, but I promise you, nothing could have prepared you for the quiet bombshell he delivered that day. In an unremarkable press cycle some time ago, rumors began circling around international think tanks, quiet dinners of wealthy elites, and a handful of policy wonks in city-state embassies. There's a hush-hush meeting happening soon, a gathering that brings top-tier negotiators, old power brokers, and certain influential newcomers together in the same room. No official press invitations, no bright spotlights. Just a short guest list so exclusive that even the confirmed participants had to sign NDAs. The purpose, these rumors suggested, was no less than forging a behind-the-scenes consensus on a major global resource pact, rumored to involve revolutionary energy technologies, precious minerals, and trade routes bridging continents. Everyone expected it to be typical backroom dealing, the kind of hush agreement that trickles down to shape the world economy in subtle ways. But the strangest tidbit was that Trump, once a flamboyant showman of sorts, apparently had an invitation. Or so the rumor went. A quiet invitation extended, some said, by a circle of dignitaries who believed he could act as a wild card to break stalemates. Others claimed that, ironically, those dignitaries had hoped to sideline him, ensuring he remained only a token participant. The lines were blurred, and the event's secrecy cast a thick fog over the details. Then came the cryptic confirmation from an insider. "He's going," whispered one ex-ambassador to a friend, "but he's going alone. No entourage." Strange, right? Indeed, typically anyone with Trump's name recognition would bring squads of lawyers, media-savvy staff, or a personal security detail. But apparently not this time. People who tracked flight manifests noticed a small private jet with minimal staff traveling to an undisclosed location near a mountainous border zone. The jets of other luminaries, representatives from several large countries, heads of megacorporations, and delegates from powerful alliances, allegedly landed there as well. Observers scratched their heads. Why such an out-of-the-way place for so monumental a meeting? The location, rumor says, was a secluded high-altitude conference facility, known for its uncluttered environment and guaranteed privacy. Surrounded by evergreen forests, with crisp air that left visitors short of breath, the building had once served as a secret diplomatic retreat. Over the decades, it saw multiple hush negotiations. Few ended well. Maybe that's why some doomsayers joked, that place is cursed. Yet the official hosts believed the fresh, quiet atmosphere was conducive to honest dialogue, far from the meddling eyes of tabloids. Or so they hoped. For days, vehicles, helicopters, and staff arrived, preparing lodging, provisioning gourmet cuisine for high-level guests. Then the notables trickled in, each with a small retinue. A handful recognized each other in the hallways, exchanging polite smiles but also uneasy glances. This was no typical summit with cameras and photo ops. It was almost clandestine. The participants included big names, CEOs of resource conglomerates, finance ministers from heavy-hitting economies, influential philanthropic barons, even a rumored representative from an oceanic micronation seeking new alliances. And yes, among them arrived Trump, stepping out in a nondescript black coat, face calm, greeting only with nods as he proceeded to his assigned quarters. The hush factor was so intense that staff apparently wore color-coded badges restricting them from certain wings. Communication devices were heavily regulated to avoid leaks. The stage was set for a pivotal negotiation that might revolve around controlling or distributing new-age energies. Some claimed breakthroughs in sustainable fusion, others talked about undersea mining rights. The details were swirling and contradictory, but one theme was consistent: enormous potential wealth, enormous potential conflict. If they hammered out a deal, it might reshape the planet's energy politics. If they failed, it might spark new resource wars or collapse existing alliances. Amid these swirling stakes, multiple watchers placed bets on who'd emerge as the power broker. Many pinned their hopes on a certain high-ranking official known for deal-making, or a famed corporate titan rumored to have discovered a key deposit of strategic minerals. Trump, ironically, was an outlier, the wild card no one fully accounted for. Some delegates predicted he'd posture or rant. Others guessed he'd just hover on the sidelines, overshadowed by bigger powers. No one foresaw that he would become the pivot of the entire drama. The formal sessions began. Over 3 days, closed-door discussions tackled everything from how to finance the prospective expansions to how to handle environmental blowback. The earliest sessions reportedly went nowhere. Countries and corporations jockeying for advantage, philanthropic voices urging caution, big industrial reps demanding immediate exploitation. Tensions ran high. Some participants walked out in frustration only to return, pressured by a fear of missing out on a final lucrative agreement. Trump mostly listened, rarely speaking, prompting a few cynics to snidely mutter that he's got nothing to offer. On the afternoon of the third day, the dynamic changed drastically. Multiple sources say a breakout group included Trump, 2 major resource CEOs, and representatives from 3 major nations. They hashed out a preliminary draft, apparently dividing up resource exploitation zones, requiring certain investment pledges, and promising a modest green corridor to placate the philanthropic side. Observers believed they were on the cusp of forging the blueprint for the entire pact. The delegates sat at a rectangular table in a private lounge with panoramic views of snowy peaks, a spectacular backdrop at odds with the cutthroat ambition swirling in that room. Some reported that the mood was edgy but hopeful. We might finalize a consensus, they told their staff. But that's precisely when everything unraveled. A hush fell as the group concluded the draft. One CEO, smiling confidently, congratulated everyone on a global game-changer. The representatives from the nations nodded, apparently relieved to find a compromise. Then they turned to Trump, expecting a courtesy endorsement. Instead, he quietly read through the draft, line by line, eyes narrowed, lips pressed. Tension mounted. Then, rumor says, he calmly said, "No, this is not acceptable." The CEO frowned, the diplomat stared. People wondered if he was angling for a bigger slice of the pie. But Trump's criticism apparently wasn't about personal gain. He found the entire structure morally untenable and dangerously lopsided for developing regions that had little voice at the table. He pointed out that entire communities would be uprooted or forced to endure detrimental side effects with meager compensation. We're ignoring the very people who produce the real labor and pay the real price, he supposedly said in a measured tone. The room bristled at the idea that he was championing fairness. The lead CEO was dumbfounded. Surely, you can't be serious. We hammered out the best possible arrangement. This is how it's done. But Trump, again calmly, laid out concerns that the philanthropic corridor was a token gesture, not a genuine safeguard for ecosystems or local populations. He argued that profits soared to a handful of conglomerates while entire regions risked destruction, further fueling global inequality. Delegates found themselves confronted with an unexpected moral stance. The vibe turned from celebratory to tense. Some delegates demanded practical negotiations, not utopian talk. Another said something like, "We have to be realistic. The world runs on deals, not idealism." At that point, Trump simply shook his head. He folded the draft, setting it gently on the table. Observers claim he uttered a phrase akin to, "If this is the best we can do, then it's not worth doing." And before the stunned group could fully react, he stood up. The CEO half-laughed, "We'll revise a detail or two. Let's not be dramatic." But Trump, not raising his voice, declared he wouldn't sign or support this pact. He added that, in his view, forging such an imbalanced agreement was worse than forging none at all. Then, in the ultimate shock, he turned and walked out. The hush was deafening, the air crackling with disbelief. No one had expected him to torpedo the entire negotiation at the last second, especially not for moral or communal reasons. That was the moment the entire fiasco ignited, the moment people realized the entire pact might collapse without his endorsement. Here is a good spot to ask you. Do you believe that walking away from an unjust compromise is a show of principle that can lead to better solutions? Or is it a naive move that risks scuttling any progress? Let me know in the comments, because that question echoes through every failed negotiation in history. The immediate aftermath was chaos. The other delegates scrambled, some frantically trying to salvage the agreement, rewriting clauses. Others fumed, calling Trump's stance posturing. A few, ironically, admired him for not quietly taking a share of the spoils. The meltdown spanned into the evening. Meanwhile, Trump was nowhere to be found inside the facility. Rumor says he retreated to his lodging to pack, ignoring repeated attempts by certain influential players to bring him back to the table. The story goes that the entire next morning, delegates held urgent side meetings, calling him on private lines, offering bigger concessions, like partial expansions of philanthropic measures or reevaluations of environmental safeguards. But each time, his staff answered politely that he will not accept the terms as they stand. Tension soared. If he truly left, the entire pact might lose its last veneer of legitimacy, especially since certain philanthropic or moderate countries were only on board because they believed Trump's presence signaled a balanced outcome. Without that, they threatened to withdraw as well. That's exactly what happened. A chain reaction took shape. Word leaked that a mid-sized nation from South America, attending the summit with hopes of fair resource deals, announced it would not sign if Trump wasn't behind it. Some philanthropic coalitions followed, citing the same reason. We can't trust an agreement hammered out by the very powers that sidelined us. By midday, the carefully orchestrated pact was on the brink of collapse. Panic set in among the big corporates and major powers. They had poured months of hushed negotiations into this. The meltdown was public enough that staffers started leaking frantic updates to outside journalists, who smelled a sensational story. Indeed, that day, a short live stream from a local reporter got tens of thousands of hits in minutes, hinting at an epic fiasco in the making. But the real bombshell came when, after lunch, the entire conference facility discovered that Trump had indeed checked out, physically leaving the premises. He boarded a helicopter that whisked him away to a regional airport, from where he flew out. That was it. No final statement, no gloating press remarks, just a cold departure. People in the lounge reportedly stared at each other in shell-shocked silence. For years, they had pegged him as a man who might haggle for better terms or revel in dramatic posturing. But never in a million years did they guess he'd just walk off for moral reasons, leaving them to either fix the plan or watch it implode. Which begs the question, was it truly about moral principle, or a cunning tactic to force the biggest possible concession? Over the next hours, delegates scrambled to salvage a new version of the agreement that might satisfy his demands for real environmental safeguards and genuine local empowerment. But with him gone, they couldn't finalize anything. Everyone was phone calling third parties, hoping Trump could be enticed back. Meanwhile, grassroots activists around the world, getting wind of this meltdown, unexpectedly praised him. Some posted, "We never thought he'd stand for the little guy, but walking out on a biased pact is the best thing that's happened at these secret summits." Others called it a political stunt, but the sincerity he showed during final negotiations suggested otherwise. The final blow arrived at night. Official press from the summit declared an indefinite postponement of the entire pact. "We regret to announce that consensus was not reached," the statement read, full of diplomatic euphemisms. Yet insiders knew the real cause. The phrase swirling among them was, "He walked out. We tried to fix it, but the cracks were too big." Delegates packed up, brimming with frustration or sorrow, depending on where they stood. Meanwhile, local journalists hammered them with questions about how a single participant's moral stance could topple months of negotiations. Over the subsequent weeks, as the fiasco turned into global headlines, multiple countries that had been on the fence admitted they, too, found the original terms exploitative. They had simply gone along, fearing isolation. Trump's exit gave them cover to break away as well. Some voiced a desire to reopen negotiations, this time with a more balanced approach from day one. Others steered clear, suspecting the entire concept was cursed. The big corporate powers that spearheaded the deal found themselves under public criticism, forced to address why so many philanthropic or smaller nations rejected the plan. And ironically, some philanthropic voices that had distrust for Trump started rethinking their posture. If he's capable of rejecting a sweetheart deal on principle, perhaps we misjudged him. Not universal adoration, but a shift from pure scorn to cautious respect. That leads to the essential question. How did the story end for him after that day? Some watchers believed he left the city or the region and continued with business as usual, ignoring the hype. But rumors say he met privately with certain philanthropic or minority delegates, praising them for refusing to accept a raw deal. Possibly, he was forging an alternative pact behind the scenes. Or maybe he was just giving moral support. Either way, the press found no conclusive sign of a new project from him, just scattered glimpses of him in different places, each time politely declining to comment on the meltdown. The meltdown, however, gained a name in the media: the summit that collapsed in silence. Silence, ironically, referencing his calm departure. Hence the phrase that soared across social media. Why did Trump walk out of that meeting? The truth will astound you. In an era where we expect political figures to compromise, manipulate, or bury moral qualms for the sake of an agreement, he stepped away entirely, undermining the entire edifice with a quiet no. Depending on who you ask, it was either a grand gesture of conscience or a subversive sabotage of a partially workable deal. But the net effect? The empire of illusions that the summit had built around fair resource sharing disintegrated, exposing a deeply flawed arrangement that might have caused more harm than good. That result, ironically, validated his protest. Midway through recounting these events, let me pose a question to you personally. If you had the power to break a flawed international deal, knowing it might set progress back years, would you do it if you believed the deal was unethical? Or is it better to compromise for partial benefits? Let me know in the comments which side you lean toward, because that moral dilemma resonates far beyond just this story. As months passed, historians, journalists, and political scientists dissected the fiasco. They concluded that while the meltdown halted immediate new resource developments, it also forced a global reflection on how we craft such deals. The next wave of negotiations, in different corners of the world, showed signs of incorporating stronger protections for local populations, aiming to avoid another humiliating fiasco. Some believe that, ironically, Trump's walkout did more to encourage real fairness than if he had stayed and negotiated small improvements. Because once people realized a figure with leverage could just pull the plug on exploitative deals, they recognized the system needed deeper reforms to secure buy-in from all parties. A fleeting rumor claimed that behind closed doors, certain disappointed investors threatened retaliation or negative campaigns against him. But no public evidence emerged. Another rumor suggested that philanthropic icons approached him to form a new coalition that might craft more ethical frameworks. No official announcements followed, though. He remained quiet, rarely referencing the meltdown in public statements, letting the memory of that abrupt exit linger as a silent testament. And so it stands, as a sort of modern parable. He walked out, left them all behind, and crashed the entire summit with a single act. The simplest possible impetus for massive change. If you wonder how a man typically known for large-scale business or an outsized persona could shift to a measured moral posture, you're not alone. Many watchers remain perplexed. Did he find a new guiding principle? Was it the influence of certain advisors? Or perhaps it was purely an expression of personal conviction? The record is ambiguous. All that's certain is that his final refusal to sign and subsequent departure set a powerful precedent. No matter how unstoppable a group of strong powers might seem, they can falter if even one key figure says no with unwavering resolve. In the end, the question, why did Trump walk out of that meeting? The truth will astound you. Resonates because it challenges the conventional script of deals at any cost. He walked away not for more money, not to gain a side arrangement, but seemingly for a principle about fairness. That's what left people astounded. Did it fix the world overnight? Hardly. But it forced a confrontation with the notion that sometimes the best negotiation is refusing to negotiate. And that might be the hardest pill for an entire culture of realpolitik to swallow. Let me close with a final reflection. As the meltdown receded into history, small details filtered out, like a volunteer staffer saying they saw him in the facility's courtyard one evening, staring at a starlit sky, muttering about how fleeting money and power can be if they trample on basic human dignity. That staffer believed that the next morning, he'd come prepared to sign a revised deal. Instead, seeing no real improvements, he walked out. We can only guess at the truth of that anecdote. But if it's real, it captures the quiet pivot from cynicism to moral stand in a single night. So, as we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. Do you think an event like this can permanently reshape global negotiations toward more equitable outcomes? Or is it just a blip overshadowed by the next wave of big players seeking unbalanced deals? Let me know in the comments, because whether or not we see more quiet walkouts for principle's sake might define the future of how power is wielded on this planet. And that, dear listener, is the essence of how an unassuming exit from a secret summit became a thunderous statement across the world stage. From the vantage of all who were there, it's proof that not all changes come with grand speeches or dramatic fights. Sometimes, Just standing up, uttering a calm no, and leaving the room can topple an entire arrangement, forcing a re-examination of everything we claim to stand for. So if you ever find yourself in a scenario where the only options are flawed compromise or a lonely departure, remember this story. One walkout might be all it takes to shape new possibilities in ways that no one saw coming.